Yeah, we're now joined by Floyd Shivambu, the Africa Mayibuye movement's leader. Floyd, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. There are a number of issues to be discussed at this point, and hopefully we'll get through some of them in this very short conversation. But I want to go to the top of it. Your big proposal, the establishment of a commission of inquiry into black poverty. Now, commission of inquiry, as you know, is a quasi-judicial process and not a policy-making process. Are you not perhaps externalizing policy-making and putting into the hands of unelected officials?
Good evening, Olive, and good evening to viewers of SABC News. So historically, in many other countries, including here in South Africa, commissions have been utilized for different purposes. Is that in the recent past, particularly after the 1994 democratic breakthrough, the commissions were almost exclusively utilized for judicial purposes or as quasi-judicial processes that were aimed solely at investigating wrongdoing in one part of the state or another. But we then gave a historical context when we then called for the commission to look into the black poverty question, because historically in South Africa there have been various commissions. We gave an example of the Carnegie Commission in 1929, which ran until 1932 to look into the white poverty question. And we can say without doubt that the outcomes of that commission, which looked into the poverty of white people, is what got to abolish white poverty in South Africa, because the conditions of particularly the Afrikaners at that period were more or less the same conditions as the conditions of black people. And then there was a dedicated focus that looked organically, meaning that there was engagement with different constituencies and communities to look into the variety of multi-dimensional impacts of poverty that defined the Afrikaner population at that particular period. And because, of course, it was guided by an organic interaction, the recommendations got to abolish not just the status quo of poverty at that time, it also got to abolish the intergenerational poverty of white people. That is why there is no poverty amongst white people. If there is poverty, is less than 1%, even as per the measurements of Statistics South Africa and other credible institutions. In South Africa, there is evidently no capacity to address the black poverty question. Black people are trapped in intergenerational poverty, of suffering, of joblessness, of landlessness, of poor infrastructure, of poor education, of poor healthcare. Everything else that defines majority of our people is reflective of the poverty levels that has defined those that came before us. And it appears that at the pace and direction that the South African state and governments have been taking since 1994, there is no solution on site. Hence, we are saying that there has to be a systematic and systemic inquiry as to what causes and what is the nature of black poverty in South Africa. You might think it's a simple question that you can just deal with through desktop research. It needs interaction with all the people of South Africa to explain that these are the conditions that define us and these are the interventions that we think must be. And part of the reasons why... Just to
pause you there, Floyd.
Yes.
There's already a vehicle that's moving in South Africa doing somewhat to the extent of what you're describing, at least mechanically. It's called the National Dialogue. Why not just join the process and champion black poverty as a question in that forum?
So the National Dialogue is not a specified commission of inquiry into the black poverty question. It's a talk shop mostly of the elites. I think the last time they met were the University of South Africa, of elites here in South Africa. There has never been representation of ordinary people in that particular platform. I wanted to give you a context of why we as Africa Mayibuye movement call for this commission. Is because in the consultation process before the formation of Africa Mayibuye movement as a political party, we got to discover some of the unique circumstances that define different constituencies. And there is no one-size-fits-all solutions to the dynamics that define different areas. So there are those who are in need of certain services, and interventions now. There are those who need a different set of interventions. And that has to be looked into in a far much more clearer and detailed way. And we're saying this boldly because it appears that government doesn't seem to know what are the conditions of our people, and that is reflected on misplaced policy responses, on misplaced interventions that are aimed at addressing the crisis of poverty of our people. And we're raising this issue because we really appreciate the processes that are going on in terms of investigating the wrongdoing in the South African Police Service and the entire criminal justice system. But we can't, as a country, be having too much enthusiasm and then we dedicate all our energies on talking about Ket Matlala, the whole country talking about Ket Matlala when people are poor. That is just another question there. Saying that there are urgent issues that the country must look into instead of just dedicating parliament and all resources to discuss criminal elements, which of course must be dealt with, but there has to be a clearer focus as to what are the issues that affect our people on a daily basis.
Floyd, if President Ramaphosa were to wake up tomorrow morning and institute a commission of inquiry into the black poverty question, what would insulate that process from being merely a talk shop, as you put it, different from the national dialogue, or, as you put it, a talk shop that espouses politics that are palatial?
So look, in terms of what we're proposing and what we would make a far much more policy submission on this, is that it must not just be a typical commission of inquiry that makes a vague and broad abstract recommendations. It must be a commission that comes with concrete recommendations as to what should happen where, over what period of time. So if the commissioners who would have been appointed for that process go to Gauteng, Rifir in Bojanala region, in the Northwest Province, or they go to Musina, to Makado, to Collins Chaban, they must be able to say that the extent of poverty in this area is at this level, and this is the major cause of poverty. And if we were to allocate land and assist with agricultural implements, we are 100% sure that this will resolve the crisis there. And it must be a clear program, not just a listening session that is in a hurry. It must be a thorough investigation as to just what type of poverty and what resources are available in each and every locality, in each and every area. That must be utilized to defeat the poverty question, because the pace, the direction, and the content of what has defined the post-1994 government has evidently failed to resolve the black poverty questions. Our areas remain poor, rural areas. There's no sign of any government. There's no sign of any developmental potential. They look exactly like they did even before 1994, if not worse, in terms of the circumstances. And the peri-urban poverty as well is deepening, because a lot of people go into urban areas with the hope that there will be jobs, and then they end up in the informal settlements with no water, with no sanitation, with no electricity, with no access to proper health care. And that can only be understood if we have a systematic and broader, organic understanding of the challenges that confront all sectors of society. And that is what we're calling for. And by the way, you will realize when we come from the National Convention, which is taking place on the 5th to the 7th of December in Soweto, that will come with a very substantial policy perspective, inclusive of the terms of reference and the methods and mechanisms as to how that commission of inquiry should get to deal with the black poverty question, because clearly all what has happened thus far, including social grants, have not been able to dent the crisis of poverty amongst our people.
Okay, on to some other matters, Floyd. All political parties, and I think the 2024 election outcome categorically tells us this is the case. All political parties in South Africa suffer from a credibility crisis. The strength of any policy proposal rests as much on its own merits as it does on the credibility of the party. And you being a new party does not insulate you from that credibility crisis. You have an extensive political career. You've been been in 4 political parties over the last 20 years. And your party itself has recently fired Nolubabalo Mcinga, the deputy president. And before it's even gotten off the ground, it's had to deal with leadership ructions at the top. But more than that, the MK party has accused you of the mismanagement of their funds during your erstwhile period as their Secretary General. And of course, you still have, albeit unproven it's in a court of law, you still have to deal with, in many instances, the VBS question, which is a spectre that looms over your political career. Why should people trust your policy proposals?
No, look, I think what the people of South Africa should do, should pay attention to the policy consistency and articulation of political leaders. So all of those things that you have said really do not hold water, because there's never been any official allegation from any institution and everything else.
But I mean, Floyd,
let's respond to your question.
Yeah.
Okay, because we spoke for a very long time asking a lot of things. Let's clarify you so that you have got clarity. People must pay attention to the policy consistency and dependability, and also deeper understanding and knowledge of what people are talking about. So like throughout my political life, we have demonstrated, you can check, some people were even doing a thread of the audio-visual illustration of the policy positions that we pursued when the ANC Youth League, the policy positions that we pursued when we were in the EFF in MK. By the way, you guys go and check the parliamentary records. Every time as a member of parliament, I was given an opportunity to lead a motion. It was either on the condition of mine workers and their remuneration. It was either on the supply of water in the rural communities all the time. And it's on record that I've never gone to parliament to speak about petty issues and focus on things that are not mainstream in terms of the developmental challenges that confront our society. So this is a demonstration of consistency, but also in Africa Mayibuye movement, we've assembled honest human beings. That is why those that are not honest and are self-seeking, and like the one that you have mentioned now, they excluded themselves. We don't fire people, they just leave by themselves. And we then get to welcome that they got to leave because they had different agendas other than the developmental progressive agenda that Africa Mayibuye movement is in pursuit of. And the good thing about our movement is that we're not just an electoral platform that is obsessed about contesting elections. We are seeking solutions now. That is why our clarion call is total freedom and emancipation now. So if we were to check even in the 4 months of our existence, or even less than that, the multiple interventions that we have made in rural areas, in institutions of higher learning, in townships, in informal settlements, in orphanages. And that is the nature, it's in the DNA, in the formative stages of Africa Mayibuye movement, that we must not just be a talking party. In areas where we can make immediate interventions, we do so now, because that is the character and nature of the organization. That is why all other organizations have got positions of secretary, chairperson, and all of those other things. But the most important position in branches and sub-regions, regions and provinces, even the national leadership of Africa Mayibuye, is a position of social assistance head. So social assistance, meaning that they focus on what do we do now as a branch at a VD level, at the ward level, at the municipal level, at the district level, at a provincial level. And all meetings of Africa Mayibuye movement necessarily should have social assistance as a standing item, meaning that we're not just a political party that is obsessed with elections. Of course, we'll contest elections in all the municipalities and all the wards, but our program is about how do we respond to the conditions of our people now, because our people are poor now, are landless now, are homeless now, are hungry now, they do not have roads now, they've got a lot and multiple crises that are happening now. And that is the character of our movement, and that is what distinguishes Africa Mayibuye movement from all these other electoral platforms that exist in South Africa.
I've got very little time left, so hopefully we can go through these last questions very quickly. How many delegates are you expecting at the National Convention?
We are inviting the entirety of provincial leadership structures from all the 9 provinces, and then there will be 20 delegates from each and every region, and there will be 2 delegates from each and every sub-region to represent all the 205 municipalities of South Africa, the 54 regions, and then the 9 provinces. And then there will be guests from traditional leadership councils, from unions, from religious leaders, from students, from youth, from women, from our strategic ally, the Manda Hashu Workers' Union of South Africa, Mausa. So that is the delegation that we're working on, that will be gathering at the University of Johannesburg, Soweto campus.
So I'm counting
from the 5th to the 7th.
Yeah, I'm counting here.
December 2025.
I'm counting here 204 times 2, 54 times 20, and 9 times the provincial leadership. I don't know how many there are. That's at least 2,000 delegates. Am I getting a good sense of those numbers?
Yeah, that is the approximate number, and it will be reflective of all the demographics of South Africa and all the areas of South Africa, and it will be an adequate and proper platform that will cover the length and breadth of South Africa from all the municipalities.
Yeah, I mean, that's an expensive undertaking. We don't yet know who funds your party, given that you haven't yet had to declare that to the IEC. But now you're officially a party. It will come at some point down the lifeline of your party. Who's currently funding Mayibuye Africa?
We do not have any major funder which is worth mentioning. In terms of the Political Party Funding Act, you declare funding that is above 200,000 rand. We have never received any funding of above 200,000 rand. That is why, as part of the press conference today, we announced that we're going to have a fundraising gala dinner on the 28th of November 2025 here in Johannesburg. And then those who are going to contribute will then contribute. But also we have encouraged all the provinces and delegates to make contributions to the National Convention of Africa Mayibuye Movement so that it becomes a success. And when we get funding that is above 200,000, we're going to declare that with the Independent Electoral Commission, because we've made a commitment to the people of South Africa that we're going to be a transparent and open organization that does not receive wrong funding from wrong sources.
Floyd, are you willing to open your bank accounts if been part of your transparency?
Like which bank accounts of the organization?
The party bank accounts, that is.
No, we can do that. Like, we can definitely do that. Currently, there's no money there. The fundraiser general.
So you're bootstrapping this out of pocket.
Currently we do not have. Currently we do not have any resources, but it's an open issue, because remember that the IEC account which we have is a public account as well, and the IEC has got access to all the funds that we got to receive and will receive.
So are you
assure the people of South Africa that let's finish first. So we can assure the people of South Africa that we're not going to take wrong money. We're not going to court criminals. And expect funding from them. We're not going to work alongside criminals. We're going to work with peace-loving South Africans who want progress, who want development of our communities, who want to end poverty, who will then say that let's contribute for this movement to go ahead. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing.
So you're currently bootstrapping the party financial burden out of pocket?
Look, there's no major financial obligations that currently are needed in terms of the operations that the organization has been having. I think in one of the press conferences, we gave an illustration, for instance, as to what were the cost implications of the consultation process and the induction workshops that we have been having. What I know as well is that in almost all the political parties that I have served in before, there are people who steal money in those organizations, so they inflate prices of basic things and all of those things. In Mayibuye, we don't do that. We go for the basic arrangements, decent meeting venues that are basic and not highly expensive, audible sound systems which are not highly expensive, food which is not highly decorated, and all of those things, so that we're able to go ahead with the business of running a political organization without spending millions and millions of rands. We work on what we have, and thus far it has been so far so good, but we still expect to get support from patriotic and peace-loving South Africans.
Okay, Floyd, we're going to have to leave it there. I really do appreciate your time. Floyd Shivambu, the leader of Mayibuye Africa.